So, welcome to Awesome Hardware episode 102.
102.
Woo! Seems a lot less special than episode 100, but we're going to try to make it good for you guys. We're going to continue making it good because the first half of the show has just aired live, and that was on Paul's channel.
It was great.
It was great. It
Glorious.
was the best show we've ever done. So go ahead and check that out at youtube.com/paulshardware. If you missed it, I'll put a link in the description. If you're watching on Twitch, just stay where you are. You know the drill by now. And this is a show that Paul and I do every single Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, both at our respective YouTube channels. We'll split it up into two halves, obviously, as well as the full show on twitch.tv/awesomehardware. So, before we dive into where Paul left off and continuing on with the tech news, let me just quickly plug some of the merchandise that we're selling on both of our beautiful stores. Mine is bitwit.tech/store. You should buy everything. You should buy at least one thing from the store 5 times, or buy everything on that store at least once.
Buy the Crystal RGB shirt.
Crystal RGB shirt is a classic.
Light up some crystal.
It's doing fairly well right now. The glasses that Paul's drinking out of right now is currently sold out. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about that, but I'll be restocking them actually with a larger size that's more in tune with what Paul's offering on his store. That's paulshardware.net.
Oh, wait.
You
no, it's so smooth.
son of a...
So smooth. No, all right, back. All right, we're gonna cut back 10 seconds. Cut back 10 seconds.
We'll totally edit that out.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Ready?
All right. And then we'll go over to paulshardware.net.
Look at my store.
Yeah,
right here.
Beautiful. Perfect timing, Paul. So
Nice.
prepared. He's got a bunch of shirts, hoodies, beanies, decals, all kinds of things, glasses and mugs. So if you buy anything from either of our stores, you'll get a loud Johnson shout-out. Slightly offensive, but it's always fun. So yeah, those are things that you can do to support either of us.
Good times.
Let's go ahead and jump into our first news story here, since we are a little bit behind on time. Not too bad, though. DDR4 prices. Let's talk about DDR4 prices and how they currently suck and will continue to suck within for the next few months here in Q2. This is a post from... where is this from? It's a Reddit post. But the original link is from Guru3D.
Guru3D article.
And so right now there are some issues with supply. As you guys know, the big three suppliers for PC DRAM are currently Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix. And Samsung is manufacturing their 18 nanometer processes right now. Micron's on their 17 nanometer, and neither of them are having really good yields. They're having some shit yields lately. That's going to keep them from really being able to provide the PC OEMs with enough of this DRAM to keep prices competitive. So we're going to see prices actually spike up to 12%, perhaps 12.5%. over the next few months, which is kind of crazy because they've already been going up for the last few months.
Are you sure it's the yields though?
That's what it says in the article.
What if they were just like planning for 2017 and they're like, you know what? I don't think people are going to need memory in 2017.
No?
Let's just stop making memory. I think that's what actually happened.
I'm sure that there were some creative minds that got a little too creative there at Samsung and Micron.
That's my conspiracy theory.
I hope they all get fired because that's a horrible plan. And clearly, we all do need memory, especially with Ryzen. Now we need like high-speed memory.
I can't even remember how much memory I need. Sorry, that's terrible.
No, that's great. So we're currently experiencing some issues here with Samsung and Micron trying to yield some decent DDR4. And since they're using sub 20 nanometer processes, this is a more advanced manufacturing technology that is just going to have more defects involved. Anytime you try to shrink the process, the yields kind of get more difficult to score. So that's what's going on there. SK Hynix is the only one who hasn't tried to match that level of process. So they're actually the only one of the big three that's not switching to a more advanced manufacturing technology. And so their yields are okay, but that's still 1 out of 3. It's if that was an actual grade that you'd get in college, that would be an F. Like, that'd be 33%. So, we're not doing so hot on the DRAM market right now. Actually, for server DRAM, for all of you server nuts out there, that should be increasing in price by 10 to 15% by the end of Q2.
Sucks.
Mobile DRAM, which we don't really care as much about, will increase by a much smaller margin, by 5% thereabouts. due to the slowing shipments of China-based smartphone makers. But
SSD prices are up too.
SSD prices are up too.
Everyone should have bought a computer 4 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before Ryzen launched. It's like Ryzen launched and suddenly they're like, hey, we should charge more for these things that people are going to need to go along with it.
Everyone suddenly cares about high-speed memory.
Yeah.
DDR4. So, yeah. Hopefully, there's an ebb and flow to these things. Eventually, it'll drop down.
I mean, if they're switching to a smaller process, then that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. As is the case with the desktop processors as well. We've seen this in multiple arenas. But by the way, thank you very much, Ben, for the $20 donation. For those of you just tuning in, the way we do things here with contributions in chat is that Paul and I will read all of the comments you attach to those donations at the end of our half of the show. So by the end of this thereabouts hour, we will be reading all of your donations. So thank you very much for contributing. The next article we have here is about the GTX 970 settlement that NVIDIA had going on. We briefly touched on this in Paul's half of the show with the sword fight that we did. So this was a $4.5 million litigation that surrounded the whole GTX 970 controversy that a lot of us are already familiar with, where NVIDIA was advertising 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 on this particular graphics card, and yet really what users were getting was 3.5 gigs on top of 500 gigs of a performance-degraded memory. So there was a bit of false advertising there. The users won that particular litigation, that lawsuit, and so the payout is $30 for any user who ever bought a GTX 970.
$30 per card.
$30 per GTX 970 that you may or may not have purchased. So I think that's pretty fair. I think NVIDIA effed up. They knew they effed up, and they kind of owned up to it. Or, and then you can make the argument, well, it's because they got caught is why they owned up to it. And that's very true as well.
This is a class action lawsuit.
It's a class action lawsuit. What does that mean? Or what's your point?
It means a lawyer or a law firm
sued them
on behalf of a bunch of people sued NVIDIA.
That's what I mean. They got caught. Like, it's not like they came.
What I'm saying is, NVIDIA wouldn't have actively sent $30 to everyone who bought a 970 unless the class action lawsuit.
No, yeah,
happened.
You're right.
It's just that's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, I suppose. Unless there was some really just rare instance where they caught it, like they didn't actually know, like there was a miscommunication between their marketing and their engineering department, and they caught it before anyone else did, and they were like, okay, because it's like when we make videos, right? We make an error in our data or something. It's always better for you to call it out first than have somebody else call it out before you.
LOL, i7 7600K.
Yes, that's what you did once.
No, I've done that multiple times.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've probably done worse. So anyway...
flipping the i5, i7 is very easy to do.
Yeah, I've done that several times.
Copying and pasting.
Till this day. Yeah. So the victims of this particular scandal, whatever you want to call it, will be receiving, again, $30 for each GTX 970 chip purchased. I bought a GTX 970. I never filed anything or never did the paperwork to get my reimbursement.
I didn't either.
Okay. Yeah, I just figured I'll probably get a 1070.
Figured as you looked over it and counted off the video
15,
cards that NVIDIA has just sent you.
Yeah, the 35 GPUs
yeah,
that are
I'm probably okay with that $30.
Yeah, not worth my time.
It's okay.
Oh god, I feel so spoiled.
But certainly worth it for anyone who did buy that.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good. Yeah. That's a good. I mean, how much was the GTX 970 when it first came out? Probably like $320. Maybe 300-ish, 320.
Yeah, it'll depend on when you bought it, but I think it was $370 at launch.
Yeah. So if you guys want to find out what Paul and I would suggest you spend your $30 on, you can check out Side A.
A sad hand job.
This is side. Spoiler
alert. Think of all the sad hand jobs NVIDIA has paid for just in the past week.
And they're all given by Jensen. Was that too far? Oh God, yeah. Well, let's do a recall of that. Let's add that into the mix.
It's nothing.
The mental image. You'll never see an NVIDIA press conference the same, my friends. You'll never see it the same.
I'm gonna add that. That's pretty high up in my list of like things I wish Kyle had never said.
As he walks out on stage in his leather jacket with 2 large video cards, one in each hand.
Shut up, Kyle.
Holding them eye level. Okay.
My God.
Let's move on. All right. Alcohol's involved. I understand that.
We've been drinking.
I can't be held accountable for my actions.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next story here. You guys like Vulkan? Hey! It's like talking to a bunch of kids. Look, ice cream!
Yay!
Hey! Vulkan, yeah, Vulkan is soon going to be coming to
different
Ashes of the Singularity Escalation.
Oh.
This is very exciting. I really have to go back to chat.
That pretty much
in this point of the show.
Yeah.
So this is an article by Mark Campbell of Overclock3D.net, and he's basically reporting that Ashes of the Singularity Escalation is going to be getting Vulkan support sometime soon, probably in June. That's around Computex time frame. This is really exciting because, as we all know, Ashes of the Singularity so far has been a really great benchmark tool for reviewers to compare sort of different graphical APIs versus DirectX 11 versus DirectX 12 to be specific.
I think the Ashes devs are pretty savvy. Like,
yeah, they know what they're doing.
Like, to my knowledge, there's not like a huge number of like really enthusiastic Ashes of the Singularity players.
No one plays the game.
But the game still exists, and you still hear about it all the time because they very actively made it an effective benchmarking tool. It was like the first DirectX 12 benchmark that you could run.
Yep.
So now expanding that to Vulkan as well, guess it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. This just gives us another metric to compare our graphics cards and PC gaming performance. I'm looking forward to using this because I'm sick of using just Doom to compare Vulkan performance. It's really just one game, and while it's better than nothing, I'd still like to have a bit more diversity to just get a wider sample size for Vulkan API performance. The API code path for the game won't be released until Stardock is happy with the API's compatibility and optimization. Now, is Stardock... I think Oxide Games is the developer, right? So who's Stardock? I didn't catch that in the... Because I know Oxide Games, I think, is the developer for Ashes. Oxide. But then but here they're saying that Stardock...
Is Stardock the parent company? I'm not sure.
That could be it. Chat, let us know. It wasn't described in the article, so I'm not exactly sure. I know I always see Oxide when I fire up Ashes on my own system, so I figure that they're the main developers.
Stardock Corporation, software development company.
Yes, I do run Doom in OpenGL to Kulu, but every once in a while I'll fire up Vulkan, like I did in the
Stardock
recent
is the publisher. Stardock is the publisher.
Okay, that's what
according
I figured.
to Kuror78 in Twitch chat. Thank you, Kuror78.
Okay, so Stardock must be working pretty closely with Oxide to get the API code for that game ready and sustainable for Vulkan.
Starduck,
which is Starduck, Starduckin. It's a star within a duck within a chicken.
Sounds delicious.
It does. Just wait till you get to the star. It has a warm, creamy center.
Yeah. Really, kind of liquid magma. Really gives a nice crispness to the...
It's like a chocolate lava cake.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's fun. Ashes of the Singularity Escalation. Is that what the regular Ashes? That's the only Ashes, right? There's not a second one that's just Ashes of the Singularity. Is the one that we use Escalation? Because I don't recognize that. It must be a separate game.
I think it's maybe, is it an expansion pack
Perhaps.
or something like that?
That could be it.
Because
I don't have
that would be my
Escalation.
guess.
Okay. I wonder if regular Ashes of the Singularity...
It's an expansion pack. It adds escalators all over the map. all the little units, they go over and they get on an escalator.
just to get a little bit of a vantage point.
Really slowly. So you get to the top. Ashes of the Singularity Escalation.
Awesome. The game is just now 5 feet higher than it was before.
We're taking things to another level.
Experience it by minute. Yes. Oh my god.
Yay.
Alright, so that's fun. Speaking of benchmarking, Unigine has also released their Superposition benchmark.
Superposition.
Which is obviously to measure PC gaming performance. Unigine, for those of you who don't know, is responsible for the Unigine engine. Evan?
What?
Unigine engine. as well as like a Unigine Heaven and Unigine Valley benchmarks that we're used to seeing. But now they have a new one called Superposition that's actually got its own dedicated stress test and GPU thermal test suite, which is kind of cool.
I was in a Superposition just the other night.
I don't need any more information on that topic, Paul, but thank you for sharing with the class.
Good.
It will support free roam, much like we see in Heaven, for example, allowing users to test Unigine 2's physics engine and play some mini games for free. So you can actually play a few games in here.
Oh.
That's kind of cool.
So it's not just a synthetic benchmark. You can actually play it.
It's actually sort of a game or several mini games. It's like Wii Sports.
And you don't have to try to convince people of it like with Unigine Valley. It's like, no, you can go into free look mode. You ever try to convince someone of that?
I've never had to convince anyone on Unigine Valley.
I don't think I have either, but
it would be kind of fun. That situation.
Yeah.
You should really buy this game. You should really play it. You should donate.
Yeah, you just get to go all. It's like free. You can just move anywhere. Look at the valley.
It's a valley simulator.
Yeah. Valley Sim.
Valley Sim 2017. So it also apparently has a VR mode, which is kind of cool since you can do free mode or free roam if you have that in VR. Like, wouldn't you like to walk around Heaven 4.0 and like VR? That'd be kind of cool.
That would be kind of cool.
Like look around the corners and just check out the tessellation and stuff, and just see how it works.
Steal the airship.
Yeah, steal the airship. Yeah, fuck yeah. So very cool stuff. It supports Windows and Linux, and could potentially be a nice addition to our existing suite of benchmarks. So
I like I like Linux support.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Cool.
All right, let's move on to our next segment, which is Pimp My PC. You guys have sent in some of the pictures of your particular rigs, and Paul and I are going to judge them very, very critically, and give you some much needed advice on how to make them better. The first one comes from Mike.
Let's go.
And he's rocking a pretty stacked PC here with a Core i7 7700K and Asus Maximus. That's 9?
Yep.
Hero, EVGA GTX 1070 for the win, too. He's got that ICX, baby!
Damn.
16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance LPX, a 500 gig SSD from Samsung, and 2 1TB WD hard drives. Beautiful case. I really do enjoy it's the Pro M, I believe, from Fantex. And correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I kind of like how you got that EK Predator in there. And I think the flexible tubing, the flex tubing, looks pretty good. You have it really like taut. There's not too much loose. I feel like that's the biggest issue with like flex tubing is that there's too much excess, and this is really just exactly the amount that you need, the right length, proper length. There's no droopage. It's not all curly and stuff. It's just a straightforward line from A to B.
Is this wait?
Hmm?
He didn't specifically say which
cooler it was.
It
looks like
the
EK.
kit? It's definitely EK. I'm positive it's
maybe
EK.
it's not a Predator. Oh yeah, because
EK they do have a kit that you can buy that has.
And he might have expanded it.
A little pump.
He might have expanded it to
pump,
the
reservoir and a block and a radiator. So maybe that's what that.
I assumed it was just because of
or
the tubing.
He might have bought that individually. But
True.
like you said, the tubing looks very appropriately cut. So I'm wondering if he might have removed parts and cut the tubing to length.
And you can do that with those Predator units.
And it makes things look a lot cleaner in a build like this, for sure. So that's very well done.
Yeah.
I approve of your choice of going straight back with the PCI Express power connectors versus straight down. Straight down can work, but I feel like it works a lot better if you have specialty cables, sleeved cables or something like that. These cables, since they're coming straight from that EVGA power supply, they're not standing out. They're not looking horrendous, but they're not absolutely gorgeous.
They're not adding anything
to
the rig
kit or whatever. But I think you've done the right thing with them here. Cable management is beautiful. I see nothing here.
Super on point. It's also thanks to the case too. It's a really good cable management case with the basement and stuff. One thing I would say is this is just purely aesthetic. Has nothing to do with function. But maybe a taller reservoir to fill up that sort of blank area. Like, you got a really small reservoir there, which is fine, but it'd be kind of nice to just see like a tall, like, maximize the space of the chassis, so to speak.
Yeah.
It might block a little bit of airflow, but I don't think it's going to matter too much.
I could even potentially, like, I normally wouldn't say water cool a 1070. I'd say get a 1080 instead or something like that. But I could see you potentially doing an upgrade on here in the future and incorporating the GPU in the loop. And like Cal said, maybe going with the larger res or something like that. But yeah, very nice build.
Yeah.
Looks pretty.
Solid. Thank you very much, Mike, for that. Next up, we've got Logic. All right, so we've got a Core i5 6600K, overclocked to 4.4 gigahertz, 16 gigs of DDR 3000. So that would be DDR4, of course, 128 gigs SSD, and reference RX 480.
Huh.
Okay.
Which he's planning to upgrade, he's already said.
This looks like it's an S340.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's planning to upgrade that. Let's see. What do we got here? I mean, it's a very sort of a very simple sort of plain, I would say. It doesn't like really nothing stands out, which is not a bad thing. But if you wanted to give it some more pop or some more flair, sleeved extensions are always a nice sort of cheap way to add a bit more character and tie in with the rest of your theme. I mean, you've already got sort of a theme in your head, getting the red and black S340, and especially with the RX 480, even though you're going to swap that out as red and black as it is. So maybe getting some like black and red sleeved extensions. You're lucky that you have a really common color scheme going on here. It's really easy to find sleeved extensions in that color. The Hyper 212, there's nothing wrong with that. At 4.4 gigahertz on the 6600K, I'd be curious to see what your temperatures are. They're probably decent enough. But if you wanted to just add a little bit more flair to the system, maybe getting a cooler that is not too much more expensive, maybe like an H7, like from CryoRig, that has a nice like black cover on it. And
CryoRig H7.
And it outperforms the Hyper 212.
The Cooler Master, the Master Air Pro 4 is only about $40. Has a black brushed metal cover on the top, which looks a lot better than the Hyper 212 does.
Yeah.
Enermax ETS T40, or I think it's a T40S now, is also a decent option in that range.
Right.
Or Be Quiet has
their Shadow Rock Slim.
Shadow Rock, yeah.
It does have the more like aluminum plating like the FinStack and the Hyper 212 does, but it looks a lot nicer. It's sort of brushed and it's kind of got a matte finish and it's not so glary or reflective like the 212 is. Doesn't pick up fingerprints nearly as much. But yeah, there are some options there. What is that at the front of the case?
I don't think that's anything.
Oh, you're right. That's just a cutout.
Yeah.
Wow, my brain was like interpreting it as like something popping out.
Oh, that's weird.
I was like, is that a drive or something? Okay.
Yeah. So I think the cooler stands out as the lowest budget item when you're just looking at it. Yeah. But I wouldn't prioritize upgrading the cooler over upgrading the graphics card.
Yeah. So, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks,
all right.
Logic.
Thanks, Logic. Next up, we've got Spencer. All right.
Spencer Tree Martin.
Got an RGB build here, from the looks of it.
Hey.
He linked his PC part picker. If you want to bring that up, Paul. Looks like he's got a 4690K.
4690K.
H100i GTX cooling it down. Asus Maximus 7 Hero. Got some Ripjaws memory in there. Looks like he's added it twice, so perhaps we've got 16 gigs of memory there.
Yes.
And then let's see what the graphics are. Okay, we've got a Fractal Design
SSDs.
Define R5 and an Asus GTX 1070.
The R5 Blackout.
Blackout! Yes, beautiful. This is actually a really nice system. It has a lot of potential here. The fact that you have RGB LEDs makes me sort of question why there are red RAM sticks in there, because that sort of locks you into, LED colors that sort of only match with red. Whereas the rest of your system looks great. I mean, it looks like it's pretty color neutral. I do see that on that motherboard, it has the swappable stickers or plates that you can put on the chipset, for example, like on the chipset heatsink. It looks like you've opted for the red ones.
Down here?
That looks like a sticker, doesn't it? Or no? Am I hallucinating?
I don't know for sure, because it's a Maximus 7, and I don't know if that... I know Asus has dabbled in that kind of thing before. I'm not sure if this particular motherboard has that.
Oh, you know what? You might be right, because I do see that one of the PCI slots is red.
Yeah.
So perhaps it is just by nature red, and that's what you're going for. But
in which case, whatever, more power to you, because you've got some red LED fans here. I don't think those are color changing at all. My main issue here is going to be this central kind of pillar to the right of the graphics card and the motherboard. It's just looking a little loose when it comes to the cable management. You could tuck a decent number of these, I think, back behind the motherboard tray, get them tied back a little bit more. I think the loose cables that are kind of hanging about or up here and over here detract from people appreciating the fact that you have nice sleeved cables here with black and red color scheme, with that red highlight accent here.
Yeah.
I think tightening all those up would make those pop a little bit more.
And maybe even in the cables by your power supply.
Yeah, you might be able to cinch those down a little bit more as well.
I see he's got one of those, I think that's like an NZXT USB 2 hub.
I believe you're correct.
Which looks a little bit out of place. It's not really like straightened
if you can move that somehow and like wedge it behind the motherboard tray somehow, that might make things look a little bit cleaner there too.
Yeah, it is a little fat, but if you could at least give it an honest try. Maybe you could even stash it somewhere like in the 5 1/4 inch bay. Well, no, you've got both of those populated, so that probably wouldn't fit. But
yeah, so not a lot of like hardware updates to be made here. I think you have a pretty good system overall, but I think attacking the cable management would give you a nice second look at it. But nice, very nice build there, Spencer.
Thank you very much, Spencer. Next up, we've got one from David.
David.
All right, he's got an AMD A10 6700, an R9 380, 4 gigs of 4 gigs on the VRAM and 8 gigs of DRAM. So, what case is this?
This looks
like an
in-win. In-win, I don't know what the case.
Okay, so what I would say here...
We only have 2 pictures.
Cable management, well, first off, the power supply cables, I would say, are sort of an eyesore, because they're ketchup and mustard. You know how we feel about that here on the show. So maybe get a new power supply or get some extensions and hide that as best as you can. I'm not sure how the cable management is in that case, but if you try really hard, you might be able to work with it. The cooler as well is, I mean, honestly, I can't tell you to upgrade the cooler to anything more substantial because you only have an A10 6700, which is not doesn't really require a better cooler than that. But what I would say is like your motherboard, the whole platform here is if you were going to upgrade, this is more of a hardware thing than an aesthetic thing. I think at this point, where the R9 380 is still a pretty decent budget card, but the A10 6700 is probably showing some signs of age, and I don't know. I think you should maybe upgrade to a Ryzen platform potentially. If you were considering
that'd be a good choice.
Dumping more money into this build, I would not dump more money into an A10 system. If I was keeping that CPU, I would not keep the CPU. I would replace the CPU and the motherboard, the whole platform for something like a 1500X and a B350 board, which is not going to set you back that much more, but will probably allow your video card to, breathe a little bit more, especially if you wanted to upgrade that to something a bit more substantial.
Yeah. You're dealing with some definite budget hardware when it comes to like your micro ATX motherboard and your CPU cooler, which, they're functional, and you're not going to have those look better without spending more money on it. So, I think upgrading your base platform is going to be your best bet as far as the system overall goes. Cable management, I mean, yes, it could be better, but what good's it going to do? I mean, just to be perfectly honest, like
still going to be ketchup and mustard.
I wouldn't invest that much in it because I think you've really done close to what the most you can do is here.
Yeah. So upgrade your platform and upgrade your video card. That way you'll actually be taking advantage of that 750 watt power supply.
Yeah.
Because Lord knows the R9 380 does not need it.
That's true.
So get something a bit more beefy in there. Save up, mow some lawns. You'll be good to go. Thank you very much, David. And finally, we've got
Yamari Ito.
Yamari. i5, Core i5, 4460 with 8 gigs of DDR3 G-Skill, Gigabyte Z97, X Gigabyte motherboard, GTX 1060, WindForce OC 6 Gigabyte variant, and all the rest. So we've got kind of a nice orange and black theme PC here. I like it. I built an orange and black theme PC myself recently. Interesting that you've got some red dims in there, though. The red sticks don't really, they kind of clash a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd say just get some plain black ones if you are going to upgrade your memory in the near future. It might just mesh a bit nicer. I love the SSD there, the Transcend. It looks great right there.
Is this a Fantex P400?
Looks like the Pro M. That's the Pro M.
Pro M?
I think. Yeah.
Okay. It does look like it's customized with the orange Fantex
lettering,
orange painting in of the Fantex logos, which I kind of like.
I like that too. It's a nice touch. Cable management is really good. I'd say your 24-pin ATX looks a little bit like loose. I don't know if there's a way to tighten that or anything. I could see that you do have a cable comb in there, so that's, I don't know. You can experiment with different cable combs as well. They don't all display the cables the same. Some are tighter than others, and I don't know, just little things. Honestly, like, you've done a pretty nice job here. Taking off the sticker of your power supply might look a bit cleaner just at first glance. It looks like you haven't dusted it in a while too. I'd maybe dust off that basement of yours and perhaps some of the fans. But that's pretty much it, man. Your cable management's solid. The hardware seems more or less well balanced. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I agree. Red memory is what sticks out the most to me.
Yeah. All right, that's it.
Sweet.
Thank you, Yamari. And that's going to conclude it for Pimp My PC. So now we can go ahead and move on to hot and heavy hardware, and then we'll close this video out because it's almost 7:30. So I think we're gonna forgo Q&A. This will be our last segment for today. So the first article that we want to talk about, we actually have quite a nice list here of good hardware coming out soon, or has already come out. The Galax is GTX 1070 single slot variant. Is kind of exciting. It's 16 millimeters thick. This is the world's first and only single slot GTX 1070. Now, we did see a single slot, I think it was, what was it, a GTX 1050 Ti, right? And that was kind of cool because if you had a pre-built system that you know, didn't really have that many PCIe slots or PCI slots, or no, wait, I'm thinking that was the half height. I'm thinking of the half height GTX 1070 or 1050 Ti.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is cool because it's a full slot design, but it's only a single slot card. So I'd be curious to see how the thermals are on it. It's got a copper fin stack, as you can see there, with some high-grade components, according to Galax, of course. They call it the turbo radiator, which is basically just a super thin cooler fitted with that fin stack. It's got a vapor chamber element. There's some holes in the shroud, as you could see, for effective thermal or heat ventilation. Some of that heat can escape. It's got a custom PCB with, again, high-quality components, and it is factory overclocked. I probably wouldn't have guessed that it's factory OC'd, but you get boost clocks out of the box of base and boost clocks of 1518 megahertz and 1708 megahertz respectively.
Okay.
Pricing and availability is TBD, but rest assured you could be running faster than reference speeds quite a bit, actually, right out of the box without any sort of manual tweaking. And this could be, I kind of like how they had a picture of two of them in SLI. I don't know if it'd be the first thing I'd recommend is to get two GTX 1070s and SLI them, but it's kind of cool how little space you could take up.
It's very tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like some micro ATX builds, you know, would do fantastic with this sort of thing. And there's only a single 6-pin connector on each of them. Even though they're factory OC, generally with factory OC cards, sometimes add and board partners will add an additional PCIe port onto them. I think it's also a marketing thing, like, look how much power this thing has, or how much power it needs to accelerate. But I kind of like the lower power requirements here, and the fact that you can just get a more small form factor solution for your graphics there. It's kind of cool.
Well, my initial response was going to be like, well, you know, like, my laptop has a 1060 in it, which is supposed to be a full-size desktop 1060, but that runs 250 megahertz slower than any full-size desktop 1060.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that's not really quite the same.
Yeah.
So that was my thought with this was, okay, they can make a single slot 1070.
Oh, the clock speed's going to be reduced.
Can they make it run even at reference speeds? But if they're even bumping it up, I mean, that's not a huge overclock, but it's faster than the reference 1070. That's pretty cool.
Which is already pretty blazing fast. So I think the real consideration here would be the thermals.
Yeah.
If it's spiking up to like 82 degrees Celsius and you can't overclock it any further, it might introduce a bit more heat into your system and things like that. But be cool to check out.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next article here, which is about yet another graphics card by our friends at Palit. I say friends. I've never talked to anyone at Palit, but they've got.
We know them so well.
I know them. We go way back. They've got a GTX 1080 Ti that features a new 4-fan solution.
The Game Rock.
The Game Rock, which looks so much like Rock Band. Doesn't it look like the Rock Band logo and everything? I mean, just look at that marketing.
Oh, yeah.
That's instantly what I thought. I was like, are they doing something with Rock Band?
Obviously, they're trying to evoke that same...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Palit's more of like a Eastern, sort of like Chinese manufacturer. I don't think they have a huge presence in the Western part of town. But here we have their Turbojet 4 cooler using dual double fans. Dual double fans, so it looks like they're two fans stacked on top of each other.
That spin in opposite directions?
It looks, apparently.
It looks like the ones on top spin counterclockwise,
yeah.
and the ones underneath spin...
Yeah, it doesn't mention that in the article, but I saw that diagram as well. And thought...
That seems stupid.
It seems stupid, but sometimes things that seem stupid are actually really good. Or sometimes they're stupid.
It seems they would cancel each other out.
I know. I don't get it. I'm not scientific enough to really understand this anti-vortex design.
This is also thicker than a 2... This is clearly a
2.5 for a 3 slot. Yeah. For sure. But that's like most of the GTX 1080 Ti add-in board partner variants that we've seen.
That's true.
So up to 7% more performance than a Founders Edition Ti. That is with the factory overclock that Palit has provided. 12 degrees Celsius lower than the Founders Edition, with noise emission 6 decibels quieter under load. I don't know how much quieter 6 decibels is.
If it's A-weighted, it's a logarithmic. It's no. Don't even try.
But the article's saying that this is actually quieter. That this fan solution is somehow quieter than just two fans. This is all hurting Paul's head very much. I feel bad for making him feel bad. But apparently you're supposed to get some better acoustics than a traditional fan design. I don't know. You never know what they mean by traditional fan design. Oh, we were talking about like a GTX 8800 or something. But so this does also feature a couple other notable things like
when you compare it to the Voodoo effects.
Wow. Up to 57% quieter. Such quiet. RGB lighting with with motherboard sync, so you can sync your motherboard lights with the RGB on the card. Blah 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 blah. Dual BIOS, 0 decibel fan, so they won't spin up unless they get 60 or 55, 60 degrees Celsius thereabouts. 12 plus 2 phase power, and yeah, there's no pricing or availability on this either. So I'd be curious to see how much this goes for. But
somebody in chat is smarter than we are. Wait, who said that?
When does that not happen?
Hex the God. Thank you for pointing this out. He said, "Look at the fins."
The fins are different.
So if the fins are angled differently, even though they're spinning at opposite directions, the fins might be angled in such a way that they're still both pushing air downwards. So if these back ones are spinning
I knew they were both pushing it downwards.
And the fins are angled in such a way that the points are higher at the point in the direction they're spinning, then the air will be pushed down towards the fan. These can spin the opposite direction, but the points are on the opposite side now.
Did you think one of them was pushing air up? I was never under that impression.
I don't just opposites
attract.
Go in the opposite direction. I'm tired.
It'd be me too. But it'd be a really interesting card to test.
Yeah, that'd be
like, is this purely a gimmick? We're the only video card with 4 fans on it. It'll snag some people. It'll pique some interests. But is it actually effective? I'd be really curious to see how that actually performs. But
I would too.
We won't know until we have one in our hands, if that ever happens. But for now, we can just talk about our next story, which is about G.Skill constantly pushing the envelope when it comes to high-speed DDR4 memory. In particular, we've got a 4333 megahertz kit. This article comes from Tom's Hardware, by the way. G.Skill announced its new Trident Z 4333 megahertz 16 gigabyte memory kit, which can hit 4500 megahertz on Z270. So I was waiting for Ryzen. I was like, what kind of Ryzen bump does that give you? But apparently it's only been tested on Z270, or is only validated for 270 chipset. Claims to be the first of its kind, though Corsair has one out right now too. So the two of those are competing for the really fast memory kits. G-Skill provided some validation screenshots of the kit running at 4333 megahertz, cast latency 1939 at 1.4 volts, so that it is slightly overclocked, as well as a stress test at 4500 megahertz with the same timings.
That's a 2T command rate too. That's bullshit.
That's so bullshit, though the final specs are still under development. So it might have some different timing specifications when the final kit arrives on store shelves. The test bed was fitted with an Asus ROG Maximus 9 Apex with a Core i5 7600K. So, I don't know. I just kept thinking Ryzen. What would that do to a Ryzen platform? A Ryzen system?
I mean, faster memory is still good because a lot of the highest end, like, confirmed Ryzen configurations with really high clocked memory, it's often been like, well, this memory is rated for 4200. We got it running on Ryzen at like 38 or something like that. So, yeah. It's still a good thing.
Indeed. Our last story for today is a quick one. It's about the NZXT S340 Elite, now featuring a...
That's not what this is.
No, that's not it.
This is something different.
Sorry, we have two more stories.
Completely different.
We have two more stories. This is a sneak peek at AMD's AM4 APU Bristol Ridge APU. I said APU twice. This is from uk.hardware.info. This is about the new APUs from AMD that everyone seems to not care so much about. But for those of you who are budget gamers or maybe want to build an HTPC who don't need a discrete graphics card, really AMD is where it's at when it comes to APU and integrated GPU performance.
So these are the non-Zen.
These are non-Zen. These are using excavator cores.
AM4 parts.
Yes, correct. These are still using excavator cores.
Interesting.
The last generation of bulldozer-based cores that AMD has been using since the Carrizo generation, or Carrizo. Makes me want chorizo. I'm hungry. Graphical improvements to Bristol Ridge are minor. I'm not going to be seeing a huge performance increase here, but the Radeon GPU does feature an upgraded GCN 1.2 architecture, same generation as Tonga and Fiji, basically, meaning H.265 and VP9 video can be decoded via the hardware. So on the hardware level, that's pretty nice. I think the biggest deal here is that this is supporting the AM4 socket. Which is pretty cool. That means you can get a relatively cheap, like let's say a B350 motherboard, or is X300 or A350 are the other ones, or A300. I'm so confused on the lesser chips, AM4 chipsets, but they're all AM4, so you could theoretically drop an APU, a Bristol Ridge APU into one of them, and save yourself a ton of money on a discrete card, assuming that you don't really need one.
So yeah, a lot of the AM4 motherboards that have been coming out have video outs on the I/O, and people are like, "What are these for?" Because none of the Ryzen CPUs have an integrated GPU, but this could potentially be one of the first chips that you could use that with.
And I'm guessing that this, since they're on excavator cores, the similar architecture, they probably function the same way as the last generation of APUs from AMD, where they benefit from higher speed memory. And I believe this is probably the first platform for an APU from AMD that we've seen supporting DDR4. So if we can get, if you can get a pretty high-speed DDR4 kit paired with one of these APUs on AM4, I'd be curious to see how much that improves the performance over DDR3. I mean, meh. It might be marginal.
I'm more curious about the Ryzen 3 chips.
Well, obviously.
As well as the...
I didn't have any stories on that, though, Paul.
The actual Zen-based... But
Ryzen 3 isn't going to have an iGPU either.
What?
Right?
No. But there are Zen... There are Zen APUs that are supposed to come out Q4. They're also supposed to be what's going into laptops.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sexy. All right. So that's exciting. New APUs, if you need one now, maybe something to look into. The last story that we have today for Hot and Heavy Hardware and for the rest of the show, my half, is the NZXT S340 Elite getting hyper-beasted. It's been hyper-beasted with a custom skin that goes all around the front and the back side panel, which looks pretty sexy. There are only going to be 1,337 or Elite amount of these in production, with a limited edition sort of custom plaque with your number. It's going to be a numbered plaque on each of these units, which is kind of cool. They did the same thing with the H440. They had a Hyper Beast H440. Hyper Beast, for those of you who are unaware, and I actually wasn't aware of this until today, is a Counter-Strike global offensive term, a CSGO term, or a CSGO skin. It's a very popular skin in CSGO. You can get like an M4A1 with a Hyper Beast skin on it. You know, they got skins. People go crazy over CSGO skins, apparently, and they pay lots of money. So, yeah, if you're into CSGO, you might be like, oh, Hyper Beast, I want my case to match my gun that I use in this video game.
Look, you can finance this case for as little as $18 a month.
Really appealing to like the less than, under 18-year-olds. Like, I only get an allowance of $10 a week.
Yep.
But if I use the pay plan with NZXT, I can afford a Hyper Beast S340 Elite. That's what all the CSGO players sound like.
Very accurate accents.
Yep. So this is retailing for $200 MSRP is what I saw the price down there at the bottom, or right there.
Ooh, hundo.
So this is actually double the price of a typical S340 Elite, which goes for $100. Whether or not it's worth it is going to depend on how much you want a limited edition case. I think there's sort of a novelty, of course, to having something limited edition, to know that there's so few of them in the world. And how much you like the Hyper Beast. He's very beastly.
If you gather all 1,337 of the S340 Elite Hyper Beast cases together in the same place, do they combine together to actually form like an actual Hyper Beast?
No. It becomes an Ultra Beast. It just turns into a Cosmos 2 from Cooler Master. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a really big... What's the biggest case you know? Or probably a Case Labs.
The biggest case?
It'd be a giant-ass Case Labs case.
Yeah, Case Labs.
And it would just look like it had got shot with like 1,000 paintball guns, because it'd just be so colorful.
It's very colorful. I like the color scheme.
So do I. I think you could do some fun stuff with that color scheme. Mm-hmm. I really do. And did you see the reservoir bar? Or the cable management bar?
Yeah.
It's also sort of a custom color. I think that's pretty sick. Like that looks. It's got a nice gradient on it. It looks very neon, sort of retro. That's my favorite part of the case, actually.
Right here.
Yeah, that looks really badass.
That's cool.
Even though it's just a graphic, I'm sure it looks great in person, if not better. But that, my friends, is all I have for my half of the show. I kept it right on time. Thank you so much for joining us.
On point.
We do have a couple donations here.
Lovely.
That we'd like to read off. Those of you who have been donating. Kyle's half, thank you very much, Sel, for organizing this.
Thank you, Sel.
Let's see, Kyle's half. There it is. Okay, Luke F. Oh, when I see Luke F, I always think it's like Luke from Linus Tech Tips. So that'd be Luke L.
F.
Luke. So Luke F, $5. Thank you very much. In desoldering some trannies, and it feels so good. I'm desoldering some trannies, and it feels so good. What does that even mean? Should I have read that aloud on stream? Should we call the police?
I think that could be interpreted in several different ways, but...
I don't want to interpret
ultimately,
it in any way.
It feels good, and if it feels good, you should keep doing it.
No, Paul, no! It sounds...
What?
This sounds illegal, what he's doing.
Desoldering
trannies?
Look, it's probably a euphemism.
This is going to come back to haunt you.
It's one of
Cops
those,
are going to show up at your door.
It's one of those figures of speech the kids are using these days, right?
Paul H. Yeah, that's me.
Want to go down to the old...
Did you say in a live stream that if it feels good, you should just do it?
Want to go down to the
I think I might have said that once.
Old sawmill and...
Paul, you're under arrest for...
desoldering trannies.
Desoldering trannies. Promoting the desolderization.
If that's the way I gotta go, and that's just how it's gotta happen.
Yeah, okay. Alright, well thank you very much, Luke
Transistors.
F.
Transmissions. He's probably talking about transmissions.
Oh, okay, transmissions.
Transistors?
Transistors. Oh, wow, okay.
Or desoldering transistors. No, not transmissions, transistors. Yeah.
Anything's better than trannies. I don't want you to be desoldering any trannies.
Okay.
Leave the trannies alone. I don't know if you should desolder transistors. I would say no. I wouldn't, because I don't know how to do that. I'd be scared to mess something up. I don't like breaking
desoldering?
things. Yeah, I could solder something, but I've never desoldered. I don't think I've ever desoldered anything. I mean, it's probably just exactly the same as soldering, but reversed. But I still wouldn't do it. Would you?
I mean, maybe. It's
if you had to. If someone had a gun to your head, it's like, desolder the tranny!
Yeah,
then you would do it.
Then I'd do it.
But if you're just like in your house and like no one's forcing you, it's like, there's a bunch of soldered stuff here. I'm not going to desolder any of it.
It's all a matter of like who will benefit. That's what you got to figure out.
Not the trannies, that's for sure.
Clearly.
All right, let's thank you very much, Luke, for your donation. Dylan's for the $5 donation. On my PC, I have a 4790K and a GTX 980. When should I upgrade my monitors and specs to handle 4K or 1440p? I cannot live without 144 hertz.
If you can't live without 144 hertz, then give up on 4K for now.
Yeah.
Just focus on what 1440p 144 hertz monitor you can purchase within reason.
And get a 1080 Ti.
At whenever you can. I would say do that. And then you'll find that your 980 probably can't keep up all the time.
If you overclock your 4790K, I'm pretty sure it'll be paired nicely. It'll pair fine with like the GTX 1080 Ti.
Get the monitor, upgrade your GPU, then maybe down the line upgrade your core, the CPU, the CPU and motherboard and everything else.
Yeah,
that's my advice.
Yep, I agree. Ben Eckert for the $20 donation. Thanks you very much, sir. You get an orange. Comment because you donated lots. Loving the shirts and mugs that I ordered last week. Awesome. Just before the show from you both. Very nice. I have an Asus Strix GTX 1070 non-OC. I'm looking to do a Ryzen build. Do you think the 1600X would be a good fit? I do. I think if you overclock the 1600X, which you should because it's the one bit of leverage that it has over the lower priced 1600, is that it can overclock a bit easier, maybe hit 100 to 200 megahertz more. Then I think the GTX 1070 is a good fit, especially if you're going to be doing something that's outside of the realm of gaming. If you're not just gaming, you're doing a bit more live streaming, some video editing, any kind of content creation. The 1600X is really a good value chip. You're getting additional cores and threads that you wouldn't have on something like a flagship Kaby Lake chip. I don't know, GTX 1070, especially if you've got like a 1440p monitor, or you're gaming at resolutions higher than 1080p where you're somewhat GPU bound, then you're even less likely to run into any sort of CPU bottlenecks with the 1600X compared to that 1070. I think you're fine. Thank you very much, Ben. Let's move on to Travis. Travis, for the
Thanks, Travis.
five New Zealand.
5 New Zealand.
I don't know how much that is. It's probably like $1 billion US,
They're
though.
New Zealand Quakers, I believe.
New Zealand Quakers. Hey guys, thanks for the vids. Learned a lot from you. But looking at a Ryzen build using Trident Z RGB, and I'm hearing about issues. Will they be fixed? I haven't heard any issues about.
I have not seen the Trident Z RGB paired up with a Ryzen board yet. If you're getting the Trident Z RGB, though, I would definitely look at ASUS boards, because the Trident Z software that G-Skill has been developed along with ASUS. In fact, if you just get the software straight from G-Skill, it's recognized as the Aura software. So it ties in with the motherboard, in my experience, pretty well if you have an ASUS board going with that G-Skill memory.
Yeah.
So I'd say the Crosshair 6 probably a good option for you. It's also got RGB lighting. I have not tried that memory with that board yet. I do not know if there's any issues going on right now, but I don't feel like it should be too much of a problem. If they can get it going like they have with the Z270 stuff, then I don't feel like it should be too much more of a difficulty to get it working with the Zen.
And time will heal a lot of these wounds, I think, once more BIOS updates start rolling out.
Yeah.
I think the compatibility for Ryzen is just going to continue to get better and better.
Yes.
You might have to wait. MB67, $30 donation. Thank you very much, sir. Here's $30 for the Jensen Huang sad hand job you missed out on. Don't have to miss out on anymore.
Thanks for the reimbursement.
I got $30 with his name on it.
We'll be handing that on down the line.
Hell yeah. So we got 2 more donations here. Tom Beasley for the $5. Hey guys, I'm pretty new and I love both your channels. I was wondering what's a good and worth it 1070, or should I get a GTX 1080? I have no PC yet. So, unless you're gaming at, if you want to max everything out or I don't know. I think a GTX 1070 is good for like 99% of users.
You get
honestly.
more bang for the buck
Better
with
value.
a 1070. It is a better value since it is a pretty decent. Actually, I haven't reassessed that though since the 1080 price dropped to $500. So who knows? Maybe maybe the 1080.
It depends because you can get a GTX 1070 now for like $370.
Yeah.
So I think that still might be the value winner, but a good GTX 1070, Zotac makes some good ones that are cheap, that are a little bit cheaper.
They're all good,
and they perform well. The Asus Strix ones are awesome, but they're a bit more expensive.
Yes.
So if you're trying to save money, I'd stray away from those. Gigabyte makes. Do they do the? I think their G1 Rock is the GTX 1080 only, but I would say Zotac is good. Has a nice discount.
MSIs are good if you like black and red.
A great way to avoid paying more than you should on an added board partner is just to opt out of the OC model. If there's an OC variant of it, generally speaking, I'd advise against it because you could just manually tweak it yourself. It's super easy. There's a lot of informational resources on overclocking guides and things like that where you don't need the factory, you don't need the manufacturer to overclock it for you, and it could save you 10, 20, sometimes more bucks than that. So thank you very much for the donation, Tom. Next up, we've got Jeff, $5. With the RGB craze, why aren't motherboard manufacturers adding LEDs to the I/O shield? A lighted I/O would be a great feature on a motherboard. Is he talking about the back or the actual like visible inside? Because I've seen rear lit I/Os inside of the case, but not on the back.
If you're looking at the motherboard, the shroud when you're looking at the motherboard that's over the I/O has been lit up by several manufacturers.
Yeah, or the AotS boards do it.
So I'm guessing that's not what he's talking about. Gigabyte had some I/O shields that they were pairing with their stuff 2-3 years ago.
And they were hideous.
They were awful. Like
they were really bad.
They were very clearly just manufactured by some third party. And Gigabyte had bought them. And was like, oh, these, we just need to put a little header on our board and we can plug them in and then we'll have like a lit up I/O backplate. But it was like this sort of highlighted neon pink and blue lighting on it. It was just
didn't match with anything.
Matched with nothing. It was awful and hideous.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would say consider something like a case for that type of option. NZXT.
Yep.
As well as Fantex, I believe. I know Fantex, maybe not NZXT.
NZXT definitely.
NZXT does as well.
I'd say NZXT more than Fantex.
Because I know the N2 Pro has a light, an LED light on the I/O.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think the H440 has one as well.
Yeah, I would say maybe look at the case with that option because that is a good idea. And having a little light back there, something that just you can light up to see what you're plugging in and whatever, is a good idea. And there's a couple case manufacturers that have come out with something like that. Beyond that, on the motherboard side, I've only seen something similar to that with I think Asus with some of their 1/8-inch audio ports. They put little LEDs inside with one green and one red, so you can tell the green is the headphone jack and the red is the mic jack.
Right.
Which I thought was a pretty good way of doing that.
Yeah. Those are some good suggestions there. Next up, we've got Victorous22 for the $10 donation. Question: I have a 6700K and a GTX 1070 running in 4K and wanted to get an AMD Ryzen for 1440p and 4K. Is it worth going Ryzen for gaming or go X99? Cheers from New Zealand. I would say
I wouldn't do anything.
X99's a little bit overkill if you're just trying to game.
I wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
I think you're fine.
Yeah. You're good.
You have a 6700K, which is perfectly fine. It's you have one of the fastest instructions per clock processors from Intel that's possible.
In the history of
7700K, you might be able to overclock a little bit better, but especially if you've overclocked your 6700K, you're fine. Paired with the 1070, you're good. If you're running at 4K, the thing I would suggest more than anything else would be upgrading your graphics card, going from a 1070 to a 1080 or 1080 Ti. Or maybe Vega, we're not sure what those are going to have available once they launch, would do you better than upgrading your main platform to either Ryzen or X99. Yep. Ryzen or X99 from where you're at right now is more of a boost in CPU performance and compute performance, which it sounds like you're not using if you're mainly focused on gaming.
Right.
These keep coming in.
I agree with everything. I'm gonna try to run through these because there's so many donations. Half-Life 2 Master for the $5. Pimping my PC with 8 120 gig SSDs and RAID 0. Stupid, but I got a good deal, so yeah.
You sound like Linus.
Well, hey, if it that's awesome. If it works for you, then go for it, man.
Sure.
Reed Heckman for the $5. Thanks for the show, guys. Paul, you're about my vintage. My first CPU upgrade was an Evergreen Cryx 5x86 Cyrix on socket 3. What was your first CPU upgrade?
Wow.
This is before my time.
My first CPU
so young.
upgrade?
I'm a baby. I'm a little baby.
My first CPU on a desktop computer that we had was a 486DX. My first CPU that was socketed in a system that I owned and operated myself was an AMD K62450. But I'm not sure if I ever actually upgraded that CPU to another CPU on the same socket or not. That's going back a ways for me, to be honest. But yeah.
You need to download more DRAM, man.
Reed, I think you might be slightly more old school than me.
All right, but thank you nonetheless. Dave, for the $14, odd number, would you guys consider making alcoholic glasses bundled for sale, i.e. discounts for buying 4 at a time? Maybe.
I have. You can buy 1 or you can buy a set of 2. I think that is what I have set up.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a 4 set.
Yeah, we'd have to ask John if he could work that out somehow.
I'm pretty sure he could.
I bet he could.
Add some kind of kickback.
Yeah.
And then thank you, Ermin, for the $10. Kamusta, Kyle, and Paul. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Just wondering, how much does GPU matter when it comes to programs like the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite and 3D programs like Cinema 4D and Blender? Honestly, if you have the option in programs like Adobe Creative Cloud to have the GPU take on some of the workload when rendering and other different tasks while you're editing. And in that case, you can see quite a decent performance bump. I've noticed that my rendering times are cut down quite a bit when I have Mercury playback engine enabled, instead of just having it all depending on the CPU. Even if you have a really CPU, the GPU can really come in handy with something like that.
Yeah, the fundamental thing that you're using is called GPU compute. There's different ways that the software you're using can access that. If you're using NVIDIA, it's CUDA cores, and NVIDIA has a CUDA program that they can work with, like a company like Adobe, and Adobe can say, yes, we'll take advantage of these CUDA cores. If you're talking about AMD, it's OpenCL is the open compute GPU compute language that they're working with. In either case, Adobe CC has support for it, and you absolutely want to make sure that's enabled, because allowing your GPU to do more work is going to allow you to do more like real-time transitions and overlays and stuff like that as you're editing. And it will also help you while you're rendering as well.
Yep. So, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, really quick Johnsons. All right, so
I have one.
Donations are closed. All right, read yours.
I have one Johnson from Carl. Carl, thank you. Carl from Texas.
Woo!
Got a thumbscrew shirt.
Woo!
Big Johnson to you, Carl. Thank you so much.
Carl. I always think of The Walking Dead when I hear
good old Carl.
And one from Nicholas Johnson to you, my friend, for picking up a CPU cooler shirt. That shirt is still selling.
What the hell's going on?
I was going to check to see if I have any on PayPal, because I've been forgetting.
Does it come in separately?
Does it?
Don't they all come through the same way?
Oh, maybe you're right. Okay, I
think
thought I was neglecting PayPal for a while, but no, you're right. Charles, okay.
Your PayPal balance is just laughable.
Hey, because I just made a transfer, okay? You've seen the transfer.
All the money is transferred.
You'd be like, wow, Kyle, you're rich.
Yep.
You're a rich man. Okay, so that's going to conclude it for my half, and actually the entirety of today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any thoughts on gaming, or?
I'm gonna be asleep.
You're gonna be asleep.
I know.
I'm
With the amount of sleep I got last night.
Yes.
That I'm going to go home, eat, and I'm gonna fall asleep.
Indeed. Yeah, and I'll probably most likely do the same thing unless my wife decides to play games.
But I do want to get back into the gaming thing, so hopefully, like next week, I'll kick back into that.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so
rating?
much. Who are we raiding? Raid. Who's the best person to raid right now?
We're rating Vinny Vega.
Oh, Vinny!
So if you guys are watching live...
Vinny's awesome.
Go to twitch.tv/Vinny_Vega.
Vega as in the AMD GPU.
Yes. VINNY_VEGA. Tell him that we sent you.
Yes.
Say big...
I play H1 with him.
Oh, cool.
He's a good guy.
Beautiful.
He's really good at H1.
Say a big thank you to Sel for lining it up and for helping moderate for this this show.
Yep.
Thanks to all you guys for watching as well.
Yep. Have yourselves a good evening or whatever time it is, and we'll see you guys very soon.
Indeed.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.